The use of dogs for search and rescue is not new. Specially trained dogs have been used across the world for decades. These dogs have been successful in searching for lost hunters, hikers, Alzheimer's patients who have wandered away, children who have become lost, victims of avalanches or trapped in rubble created by earthquakes or explosions, victims of boating accidents, or evidence in criminal cases. Today, we will talk with Utah search dogs and find out more about all of this. Stay with us to find out more.
Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is a place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Today's episode, for most of you, will fall under the category of unexpected. When something bad happens out there, like someone goes missing, gets lost, or gets caught in a natural or man-caused disaster, one of our least understood and most valuable search team members are the search dogs and their handlers. Well, we're glad here to have on the show someone to help us know a little bit more about this process and what happens there. I'm excited because I have a team member from the organization Utah Search Dogs. And to help us learn a little more about this organization and what they do, I have here on the call today and on the podcast, Harley Goodheart. And I want to say to Harley, thank you for being on the show. And what's going on, my friend?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Just enjoying beautiful, nice day in Utah right now. So
It is. It's getting nice out there, nicer and nicer. I'm loving this time of the year. Do you do anything fun or special in the summer that gets you excited for this time of the year?
Actually pretty big into whitewater kayaking, so I get excited for when summer comes around and I can get out into a boat and play around in the river.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Is there anywhere you go specifically for that? Do you stay in Utah, or where do you go for that?
In the paddling community, the joke is the best whitewater in Utah is in Idaho, so we venture up into Idaho.
There you go.
Go kayaking up there. So
At least it's pretty close, right? And you're joining us from what part of Utah today?
Salt Lake City.
Okay, so a couple hours up north, and you're into Idaho. Not bad. So,
Yeah.
pretty good. Well, I'm excited to have you on this show here today. I'm excited to learn and to share this information with the listeners. So the first thing I want to ask you is just about USD, Utah Search Dogs. Is this a busy time of the year for the organization, or is it just random or year-round that you guys do what you do?
I mean, every season has, people wandering off. Fall, there's hunting season, hunters not being prepared, going out. They're going out for 1 or 2 hour hunt and they get lost, or they go over a ridge and whatever. It starts raining or snowing, because anything can happen in the mountains of Utah in the fall. Summer, heat, easily can get overextended heat-wise with not bringing enough water. Wintertime, it's can be a nice day, and then all of a sudden it's blizzard conditions. So, and
Right.
spring is just as unpredictable at times.
Yeah.
80 degrees and then snowing, so 80 degrees and then
Right,
snowing.
Harley,
Just
isn't this-
preparing for those
isn't that-
elements.
I was going to say, isn't that the saying here in Utah? You get 4 seasons in one day sometimes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, for those of you who are picking up this from outside of Utah, beautiful place, wonderful outdoors place, but depending on elevation, it's crazy. So many times, right here in the Salt Lake Valley, I'm also in the Salt Lake Valley, I'll look in June and July up to the mountains, and there's snow caps still up there. It's amazing to me that so much of that happens right here in one spot. So you're saying that all year round these things happen. They're kind of random. It's just the nature of the game. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what is your role with USD, Utah Search Dogs? Can you talk about that for a minute?
I am a handler, so I handle my dog Indy. He's a 3-year-old golden retriever, a field golden is what they call them. And there's different types of golden retrievers that I've found out over the years. There's like English creams, and then there's, like the honey goldens, and the red field goldens are a little bit darker, and they're typically bred in the U.S. for hunting, so they have a lot of drive, and they have a lot of energy. And my other family members, extended family, they have like English creams, and we also have an English cream, and a couple other honey dogs, and then they also have field goldens, and the field goldens will be running around a lot longer than the creams will, or like the other goldens that we've had. So it's like they have a lot of energy to burn.
Right. So I was looking on the website, and it's pretty cool. You have a pretty large team of members. Now, help me understand a little bit about USD. When I look at the members list, are you guys volunteer or staff, or is it a combination of this with USD?
We are all volunteers. So within our organization, everyone's volunteering. We have positions like training coordinator and that kind of stuff that is appointed and stuff, but nothing paid. When we go on searches, we're not getting paid. It's out of our volunteer time. So it's a benefit to it's a benefit to like people who are needing to be searched for, families or whatever, that don't have the funds or necessarily the resources to hire like a private investigator or PI or whatever, so it's like or because search and rescue can get expensive, like getting the life flight out or all this other stuff. So out of that whole realm, it's nice that there's entities that do it for free, like us.
Yes. First of all, my thanks to you. Thank you for that. First of all, I'm sure that's a collective thank you from everybody out there, because what an amazing and powerful thing to do, and you're doing it on your free time and the kindness of your heart. So that's true community caring, and there's nothing better than that. So thank you for that. When I look at the different people that you have here on your members list, quite a few, which is awesome, and I think that so would there be specializations in these different people, or is it sometimes a matter of who's available when something happens?
When we get a call out, so whether it's a department or a family member or whatever calls us, we send out a notification to us, and we can find out what the search is, whether it's like human remains detection, or if it's a trailing needed, or if an area, or what the environment is. So then we'll select which dogs are best for that condition, and then also who's available. And a lot of the people on our team have multifaceted dogs. So some of them are going to be able to do trailing and HR and area, and so having a more broad spectrum dog is going to get you on more searches in that dimension, or the availability to get on more searches.
Yeah, and so I'm understanding this to be that each handler or team member has their personal dog that is, and your dog lives with you, and that's where your bond and relationship is, right? Because they're actually a family member. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. And
that's cool.
My wife's main concern was, when I first started this, was, can he still sleep with us, and can we still snuggle him, and can he still be in the house? Which is like 100% yes. So she was like, okay, you can do this.
That is so cool. Yeah, exactly right. You don't want to lose a family member, but you're excited for your dog to do this. So, what drew you to this? Like, what was your initial interest where you said, I think I want to do this?
For me, when I started dating my now wife, she had a golden retriever that just love to sniff around and search for stuff, and I'd hide things in the house, and he'd find it, and I'd be like, man, I wish I could do search and rescue with him or something. But he had a bad heart and bad hips, and just like was not cut out to do that. And so I'd never, I put it on the back burner. But then we decided to get a puppy. And growing up, my mom was a vet growing up in southern Idaho, and so we'd get like stray dogs coming into the clinic all the time, and like puppies all the time. So it was like the idea of buying a dog for me was just not in my realm. I'm like, I'm never gonna buy a dog. Why would I? There's so many free dogs. And so when we ended up buying my dog Indy, I was like, ooh, buying a dog, he has to pay for himself. And I'm like, I kind of want to do search and rescue, so maybe that's a way that he can work. He can work, and I can do this. So that was my justification.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had an itch all along to do this, right?
Yeah.
And your first dog was kind of it made you go, hey, look, this dog's pretty talented, right? And then your new puppy comes along, and you kind of get him involved. So your dog, what's the training look like for that? And then as the handler and owner, I'm assuming there's ongoing training and conditioning. Is that a true assumption?
Yes. Yeah. I guess you know how they say that there's like you can only see 10% of an iceberg that's in water, and the other 90% is unseen. And that's kind of the same way with search and rescue. It's like that small percent of the time that people see us, they don't see the other 90% of the work that goes in behind it, which is all the training. And there's training for the dog, there's training for the handler, and we are training for our group. It's mandatory that you have to make training at least once a month, but we train almost every week. So we're volunteers, so things come up, and we have lives and families and stuff, so sometimes we're only able to make it once a month, but for the most part, most of us are making it every week.
Wow. Well, that's one of the big reasons to do this show, is to get a feel, an understanding, and appreciation for the level of work and commitment that really goes into this. Because one of the things that I thought of before, when I did another interview last year with somebody in this lane as well, and it just came to me that I'd see these emergency events happening or missing people, and you as somebody watching the news, right, you're going, oh wow, I hope they find them, and then you see a dog and a handler or multiples coming looking, and for just a couple minutes you appreciate, wow, I'm glad they're doing that, but then the news goes on and you don't think about it anymore. But afterwards I started thinking, well, I want to know more about what these guys do and what's happening, all the work that gets involved in this. And so that's why I'm excited to talk with you and to have this, because I think people should appreciate and recognize the work that goes into this. This isn't, they just show up and do this, right? There's a lot of work involved in making this happen.
It's not just buying a trained dog and you're good to go. It's like,
right.
For me, it was my first dog, so not only was I training my dog, but I was also learning myself. Yeah. And the dog's way smarter than I am. He learned his job super quick, and me being able to read my dog was difficult. You're looking at these subtle clues of why, when the position of the tail, where's the position of the head, what's happening, why is he looking this way, and he's is he working or is he smelling some other dog that walked through, and so it's being able to just see that difference of he's working right now, okay, he's looking for human scent, or he's just crittering and he found some rabbit that ran through here or something. So it's being able to identify those two different actions in the dog takes time, and knowing when so the dog does a lot of the work, he does like 90% of the work. But then there's like these aspects of it that the dog catches like some scent over here, and you're looking at him, and you're like, oh, he's in scent right now. But now over here on this other side, like we're following it, and then it disappears, and now he's not in scent. And then we go over here, like to this other area, and now he's back in scent. And so you have these like pictures of here, here, and here, and you have to, as a handler, you have to look at the big picture and be like, oh, the wind's blowing through this area over here, and we got sent over here because the wind was like lifting up and dropping it down over here, so the person could actually be over here in this area, because like the way the winds or the valley or like scent goes up trees, and so there's a whole science behind like scent and like where the scent is flowing and how that cold air dropping from the trees pulls down, and so then it can cool it down, so air will fly, like scent floating through the air can get caught into trees and get pulled down. And so you're trying to figure out these pictures of what the dog's smelling because he's giving you these indications, but then you as a handler have to figure out where, like you have to put it all together. And that's the hardest part of being a handler, I feel like.
Wow, I'm glad you talked about that because, yeah, I didn't even think about it. So I'm envisioning with what you're saying almost like data all around us, but you need your phone to pick it up and translate it to us. The handler is the phone that picks up what's coming from the dog and translates it to, we got to go over there, or there's something happening here. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. Okay, I noticed that you have some certifications and things like that on the website. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. First of all, I see right up there, what's NASAR SAR-Tech 2? What is that?
So NASAR SAR-Tech 2, it's a search and rescue organization that does certifications for basic search functions and like basic search and rescue and more advanced search and rescue. They do courses on more specific stuff, so like high angle ropes and all this other stuff, or dog handling, and there's different certifications. So Indy and I are NASAR certified in trailing, and we're certified in one aspect of trailing, and then there's many different facets of trailing in different environments, in different, you know, because working in a city is different than working out on the side of a mountain. There's way more distractions, there's cars, so being able to do the different categories and also different ages too. You know, if someone walked by, 30 minutes ago, the wind might have blown their scent around versus if they just walked by 5 minutes ago and the wind hasn't blown around their scent. Or maybe it was 24 hours ago or 36 hours. And so as it ages, that scent gets blown around. Maybe it's blowing, the wind's blowing from the west, and then all of a sudden it's blowing to the north. And so as that scent gets blown to the north and to the west, like your initial point is over here where the person walked. But as that scent gets blown around, maybe you're trailing, the dog's getting sent over here. And so as you're working through, you get that margin of error increases, and that's where you start getting less and less of a video and more of like a like stop motion picture, and then eventually it's just like a picture of a rock and then a picture of a rock a half mile away, and so you're like, are these the same thing or not? So it's like it starts getting more and more truncated as it ages, and so things get more and more difficult, and you can get certified for different aspects of that.
Wow. Yeah, like my level of respect, huge already, but like the scientific nature of this is making it go like I'm going, oh my gosh, dude, this is pretty complex. So yeah. Okay, WFA, what is that? That's also on the list.
Wilderness First Aid. So if we're looking for someone that hasn't shown up from a hike or whatever, they're probably injured.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why people don't make it out. Luckily, most people have phones nowadays, so they can call. And service is almost everywhere. Even with iPhones now, you can do the satellite messaging. So it's getting better, but maybe your phone died because you were using maps or whatever, and you had GPS going, and it just burned out your battery faster than you'd expected.
Yes.
So it's like there's that aspect, or it's like they're injured. So wilderness first aid is we get to this person out in the middle of nowhere, and we have to assess what injuries they have, what's going on, and we need to be able to use the limited supplies that we have to get them back to a medical personnel.
Mm-hmm.
And so the wilderness first aid aspect is like being able to utilize things in your environment to splint a leg, like being able to use trees or clothing or a shirt to wrap around a stick to like splint a leg or an arm or something. So it's kind of creates a lot of creativity within the first aid aspect of it.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And you're right. You guys may be the first one to bump into the lost person, and you need to be able to participate and help in that. So,
or we may be the ones that get injured looking for the other person, so we have to be able to treat ourselves and get ourselves out of there too. So,
right, I didn't even think about that. That's so true. The danger that comes with this, depending on the terrain as well. Being alerted to that. Good point. What is CGC?
Canine Good Citizen. So being able to take your dog into public and your dog not be a nuisance to others, basically.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, talking about Utah search dogs, do you know, as being part of the organization, the origin of Utah search dogs? Like, how long has it been around? Like, what or who initiated this organization?
I know Nancy was one of our founding members, and let's see here, I'm blanking on names,
Okay.
but there was wow, I can't. I'm blanking for whatever reason.
No
Anyway,
worries.
so
I'm
they
gonna put the time. I'm gonna put the time here just so I can go back and shave some of this. But okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But they were part of another organization, and each organization has different demands. So, like, you have to make X amount of trainings per week or X amount of trainings per month, and you have to show up to so many searches and this and that. And so they made this organization to fit their schedule and their demands of what their other lifestyles needed. So that's how they ended up creating it, and it's kind of just grown ever since, and
Cool.
we've just been adding on.
Yeah. So we're thinking maybe 20 years or more that it's been around, or that's incredible. Thank goodness for you guys. So each handler in this organization has their dog, or maybe more than one dog. But do you guys train dogs too, or is that's not in the scope of the organization?
We each have our own dogs. We can get certified. We can with other dog handle or other dogs on the team. So if let's say I get certified with Indy, and then another handler on my team would like to run Indy for whatever reason, they would also have to take a test and get certified with Indy to show that that handler can read Indy and manage that dog. And sometimes the dogs won't work for other handlers, so that's an issue.
That's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, but usually we're running our own dogs, and we're not typically training dogs for other people.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I thought I'd ask. Going into the conversation here, I wasn't sure if there were two arms to this organization, but it seems like it's search and rescue focused, and That makes sense to me. Do you guys find that there's any specific dogs that handle different scenarios better? Or is it a matter of training? Or does breed have anything to do with some of this? I know all of their smell is amazing. Like they can, pick up on things.
Yeah. So I think it's whether the dog wants to work or not is the biggest deal. When I first started, there was an Aussie that was super smart dog, but they'd start trailing and she'd just sit there and bark for several minutes, and then she'd get to work. And then she was like really slow and just like wasn't really animated. And then they switched her to area, and that dog was so excited to be off a leash and just running straight to the person and just completely animated. And so that dog loved area way more than it did trailing. And so it's like, maybe we're just going to do area with this dog. Some dogs do not like the smell of HR, human remains, and so they're really adverse and they don't like it. Other dogs love it and they'll search it out. And so it's really dog dependent, and it's also what the handler is capable of too. I think trailing is probably the hardest discipline out of the three, because you're reading your dog, and I don't know why, it's just really complicated following the dog, and your dog's on scent, he's off scent, he's on scent, he's off scent, and he was on it back here, and when did we lose it? And it was like he was last on back by that tree, so maybe let's go back over there and see if he can pick up something, or let's circle around. So there's a lot more nuance to it, and it uses way more brain power of the handler. And some handlers just don't like that, or they're not capable of managing all that information. So it's really dog dependent and handler dependent. So what the handler is capable of, and some handlers they tried tracking, but their dog just pulls them over. It's just like they're getting dragged down a mountain, and it's just dragged across the grass, and because the dog's just this way, whoosh, and takes off, and then the handler's gets pulled over. So it's we had one handler that he's like, my dog's too strong, I'm not going to do trailing. I'm going to go into area, and that's that.
That's hilarious. Well, if you could, I'd like you to take just a minute and describe. You said there were 3 areas. So area, tracking, what's the third area? And then could you just define them just generically for everybody so they understand those different areas?
So there's tracking, which is typically the footstep to footstep. They're following exactly where that person went. And then there's trailing, which is a little looser. They can be within 100 feet or 50 feet, depending on which test you're doing. And they're following more the scent of that person, and they may catch a whiff of the person and go straight to it rather than circling back around the tree and where that person went exactly. So they'll take shortcuts, and which in a rescue situation, getting to the victim as fast as possible is what you want. And so for us, it's preferable that the dog takes that shortcut and goes there, which if he was doing a trailing test, he'd fail that trailing test because he didn't loop around exactly what the person did. So there's that little differentiation there. Also with area, you're going off, well, I guess for tracking or trailing, it's scent specific. You're looking for one person. We give the dog a scent article. They smell that, and they're like, this is the one person that we're looking for. They could walk through a crowd of people, and they'd still be able to follow that one person.
That's amazing.
Yeah, especially because it's I smell a dog. I'm like, well, they all smell like dogs.
I know.
But and so then there's area where they are trained to find any human scent in that area. So if it doesn't matter who's out there, and you can do scent specific area where you just give them the scent and they run out and they can find that person, but they're not necessarily following that trail that the person followed.
Gotcha.
or there's just an area problem where it's like they're going out and finding anyone who's out there.
Hmm.
So if there's 3 people out there, that dog will alert to 3 different people.
Wow.
And then
Yeah,
there's
that's helpful to understand because I see by what you're explaining the specifics of those paths, but hadn't thought about that before. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and then there's also human remains, or HRD, human remains detection. We call it HR, human remains. But that is what it is, a deceased person, whether that's a bone, blood, whatever it is, or a full body, that's what that dog is smelling. And there's various amounts of decay that the dog's trained on. Whether the person was burned and then it's decayed, or so there's all these different scenarios that you can train for, and that has a whole new realm too, because you're like, okay, let's take a cotton swab with a drop of blood on it and hide it in a car, and the dog goes through and then alerts right where the cotton swab is, or that drop of blood. You're like, okay, look how great my dog is, right? I can detect a drop of blood in this car. But then let's say you're out on a search and you get a tissue of some kid that had a bloody nose and threw it in the trash can or whatever, and then there's like a murder case or someone goes missing out there, and it's so it's like you're trying to see if there's human remains in this area, and then there's like the dog's alerting to the garbage can, and it's like there's blood in here. Is it the victims? Is it not the victims? Are you sure? Like, is it pertinent to this or is it not? So you're like, what? So that's where the handler has to also come in and be like, okay, it's probably like a tissue from a kid, or maybe this is from the person or missing person, or you have to kind of discern, because maybe it's underground and it's like, oh well, we can't see what it is. So then the dog's alerting. So do we we alert, bring someone over? So it's being able to discern what may or may not be an issue.
Yeah, and that's amazing to me. And what I'm hearing is the dog's got to be on point, but they typically are, right? Because they're so sensitive to scent. But it's really the handler that's got to be on point as well to pick up on what's going on and interpret. That's amazing to me. So I spent so much time thinking about how amazing the animal is, but it's the team. It's the team that makes this work so effectively. That's cool. Really cool. Well, let me ask you, has there been any notable, in your opinion, changes, adjustments, just different ways of approaching field rescue in recent years? Is this a process that evolves, or is it pretty straightforward? Do these things and we usually always get the result we want?
Ooh. That is a good question, and I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability.
Sure.
I watched this documentary on Netflix of a ski resort near Lake Tahoe that had an avalanche, and they brought in a search and rescue dog. And it was the first time a search and rescue dog had found a victim in the U.S. And I think that was in the 80s. And so it's fairly new, and so there's been advancements, and Nancy, who was on our team, she also was deployed during 9/11, and she went to the towers, and hearing her experiences and her talk about how the dogs that they were trained, like some dogs were trained for HR but not really, and so it's like they knew how to read their dogs, but it wasn't like really specific. So as time grows, like they've really developed into more of these more specific roles of like HR and how to train for HR and how to train for trailing and how to train, because we've seen the movies of like, the bloodhounds and they're chasing after the convict with the dogs and they cross the river, and so I feel like it's been around for a long time, but I feel like it's always developing more and more. Like as we learn more about the science of stuff and like the different compounds, like how like there's hundreds of different types of compounds as the body decomposes, and which ones like the dogs are trained on and which ones they're not, and so it's like we're learning more and more about it, and so as we learn more about it, we're gonna maybe adjust how things change, and also with technology, how we search is going to change. With cell phones and cell service, there's less and less calls, because more people are able to call out when they need help, and so we're not looking for them. We know exactly where they are, and we're just going to go pick them up. So the dog to look for them isn't necessarily needed, and so it's going to be ever changing. I feel like. I don't know if that answers it very well, but
no, it does. I like that, and it makes sense, right? Like with technology advancements, communication, it makes sense that there would be some learning and evolution. So I appreciate that. But you're right. I mean, it seems like with cell phones and things like that, that when you guys do get a call, it's probably pretty serious. It's clearly somebody's not able to get help, or they're awake. They're not even awake or whatever. So it does turn the likelihood of every one of your searches to be something, more difficult to run across. So,
yeah.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, we just, in your mind, the differences between something like an avalanche search, is that very similar to, one of the other ones that you mentioned? Like, or is there a difficulty there with scent? Let me bring something up. I had a dog one time years ago who I lived back east, big snowstorm, and he would always just run out in the yard and do stuff, sometimes in the front yard, and come back in. Well, one day he went out, big snowstorm. It might have been the first one he experienced, and he got lost. Like we found him 2 days later in another town. Does the snow present a problem, or is it about training or anything like that? Sorry, that's a huge question. All around avalanche, but anything you can share about that would be cool. Yeah.
I mean, the snow does present a problem. Even any precipitation does. Is it washing scent away, or is it covering it? Is it sealing it up? Is like the snow melt on top and form a hard layer of crust that like air doesn't really penetrate through, so that scent's not able to penetrate through very well? Or maybe there's icy crust over here where the person's under, but it's able to like come up over here where it's a little shadier over here where there's not crust, and so you're getting scent coming up over here out of the snow, and so the dog indicates over here when the person's actually over here. So, there's variations on that, and so it does cause some difficulty, and so going about it, whether we're training for avalanche, it's really similar to an area problem where we have people in a given area that need to be found. The difference is that they're under snow. And so, and then there's other people walking around in that area, typically with an avalanche. They're probing, they're digging, and so the dog has to know that there's a difference between a full area, because like if he goes out there and he's like, oh, I'm going to find any person that's out there, this person could just be resting under a tree because they've been probing all day. And we don't want them to find that person. We want them to find the person that's buried underground. So it's like they do have to know that difference. And for my dog, at least, when I go to training, he knows that he's going to go off and search for something. And so me making making that change from we're looking for someone under the snow, it's a little bit easier because he knows, he's like, I'm looking for a person. I just don't know who or how I'm doing it yet. And it's as long as he knows the game, and I can shape those things of like, okay, we're looking for a person underground with this command, under the snow with this command. And so he caught on to it pretty quick. Some dogs they don't distinguish very well. That like, oh, we're actually looking for a different person or this or that. And so it's like, it really dog dependent and how easy you can make those transitions. For me, it was easy. And I have a quick story because we don't go searching for animals typically. We get a lot of calls for people with lost animals, but we train our dogs for human scent and not dogs or cats or that have gone missing. And my wife was taking our dogs on a walk, and I have a little English cream golden that is a little firecracker when she goes out on a walk, and she just disappears. She'll be like half a mile away or whatever. And so my wife's on this walk, and she's used to the dog running off and then coming back a little bit later, but then like she gets to the end of the walk, she still hasn't seen the dog. She starts backtracking, and it's been like 45 minutes, still hasn't seen the dog, waiting around, backtracks, and then Indy's right there next to her, and then he takes off down this hill. And then she's like calling out for her, "Where are you, Rudy?" And then like Indy comes running back up, and she's like, "Oh well, let's keep walking." And then he turns around and runs back down, and then runs back up and runs back. Where's like the Lassie experience, And they're just like, "What? Timmy's fallen in a well?" And he was just running down to our dog Rue, who had fallen between a retaining wall and a fence and couldn't get back out. And so she was trying to get out and she couldn't. And Indy would come down to her, see her, and then run back up to my wife. And I was impressed because he was able to make that relationship that like Diana was looking for our other dog. And so Indy went off looking for the other dog and then like brought Diana down, my wife, and was able to find that dog. And so I was impressed just because like the dog was able to make that relationship. Whereas most of the time dogs struggle with that relationship. It's like, oh, well, I'm usually just searching for X. No, I'm not searching for Y. I'm searching for X. So it's very dog dependent.
That's impressive. Yeah, that's Indy seems to be pretty smart dog. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. That is cool. Thanks for sharing that. That says a lot there. And I think that's important for people to imagine and understand that these dogs, they have capabilities and they range, right? And what he did, Indy, was exhibit something a little extra special, which I think is pretty cool. Let me ask you about the normal day, week, or month of a search dog and their handler. Let's use you as an example. Maybe you don't get calls every week or month, but what's a normal lifestyle for you as you anticipate the possibility of getting that call that we need you and your dog for something?
I luckily have a flexible job, and my boss is pretty flexible, so I've been able to call in and be like, "Hey, there's a search today. Can I call out?" And so I'm able to go on searches and stuff. And a lot of other people on the team have flexible jobs. Some a little less flexible. They have to kind of schedule in if there's like a pre-planned search, or if we're going back out to an area that's like, we've kind of searched this aspect of this area, now we're going to search on this other side, and we're going to do that on Tuesday, so that like probably more people are able to come. But the given month is every weekend, for alternating every Saturday, Sunday, we are training 4 to 5 hours. And for me, it entails driving 45 minutes to an hour north near Willard, and training for 4 or 5 hours and then driving back. So it's a time commitment every week. And then exercising your dog, because you want to be able to go out onto a search and be able to go 10-12 miles of searching, and so your dog being exercised and daily walks and hikes and all that stuff, along with like me being prepared to hike 10 miles or all day looking for someone on not so great trails, like you're bushwhacking. You're not on a nice even trail, you're on the side of a mountain, sagebrush, foxtails, rocks getting in your shoes and boots, and you're through the brambles and getting poked with pokies and everything. So it's it's not just like a little pleasure joy hike. So I mean, you're training for those situations, and so you want to be ready when it does happen. So you don't want to be the one that, oh well, I got part of my area searched, but then I got tired or this or that. So you want to be able to do as much as you can as fast as you can.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I'm glad you shared that too, because I know this isn't true, but in my mind, one of the first thoughts that comes to my mind when I think of this is the scene in Rambo, the movie Rambo, where this chubby older guy with suspenders brings his 3 dogs out, and they go running around, and he's going up the side of a mountain with the police, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's not going to last very long. Right? So keeping the handler keeping in shape too is pretty important. I like that you brought that up. Yeah. Interesting. Well, can you share, maybe if you're aware of any really memorable success stories that you, your dog, or your team, somebody on your team, has experienced in recent years that really is one of those things where you guys go, yeah, thank goodness we were there to do this?
I was on a search in September in Vernal, and it was for a guy that went missing out in the middle of nowhere. They found his truck a week later, and they didn't know what happened or whatever, and so we started searching the area, and the family members want to know what's happened and stuff, and where he's at, or if he's okay, or so we're searching this area, and we search all day, and they had helicopters come through, and they were like, oh, well, we thought we saw something near this tree over here, and we looked up through that area and didn't find anything, and it was getting pretty late, and we tried pushing a little further, and then we had to head back. And then the next morning we got out, and it wasn't our team, but it was they kind of train with us, and we know them, and they, right when I started getting deployed and getting Indy ready to go out and search another area, they had found him, and it was another dog team, and
wow,
he had deceased, but it's good knowing that they found him. Like the family's not wondering, and we've worked a couple cold cases, and we're working one in Nevada right now, where the kid, 20-something-year-old guy, ran off into the mountains, and they had cell phone pings, and they're kind of putting it together, and we're still looking for that guy, and it's like, where did he go? And so we're gearing up for another search to see if we can find anything here in the next couple weeks to go back out. But it's so much nicer for the families to know where they are, what happened, or at least like have them or know where they are, versus the unknown.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and I didn't know, I guess I just didn't think enough about it, but cold cases, that's cool that they have you guys do some of those as well, because you're right, like some of these situations go unsolved, and it's got to be just turmoil for the family and friends of that missing person. And so that you guys are able to also do that in your workload, to be able to do some of these cold cases. Pretty cool. Thank you for doing that. It's amazing. Yeah. Well, one other type of question, maybe in the other direction, which is there a memorable or particular challenging rescue mission that you can think of either for you and your dog or somebody on your team? Doesn't mean a failed mission. It just means it was challenging, like really pushed you guys to the limits.
There was a search. I didn't get to go on this search, but from the sounds of it, it was a tough search, just because when you look at a map or even like satellite images of an area, you're like, oh, that's not too bad. And when you get out there, it is a different world. And everyone I heard that went on this search was just like, it was so difficult. Like, it was in the scrub oaks. The scrub oaks were so thick and it was so steep that they could not get into a lot of the area to search it. And it was like getting in and getting out was a struggle. And I was like kind of glad that I wasn't on that one. But, you know, it's deceiving. I was on one search near Farmington, out in the marshes there, and it was just we got our area assigned to us by the National Guard, and we went out there, and I was looking at the maps. I'm like, oh, it's kind of big. And we get out there, and we start walking down the one leg of it, and I'm just like, this has got to be like 10 square miles. Like, we're 25 square miles. This is like huge area, and like we're never going to be able to even touch this today. Like, we may be able to get like a small portion of it searched, but it's just like, in some aspects of it, it's just like there's so much area and not enough people to cover it. And then if you do cover it, it's like, is the dog going to pick up on it? Because on my test, actually, for my area, the winds weren't great. And when you're searching, the winds are your friend. You want wind. And there was just no wind. And, you know, Indy, we start off, and Indy's giving me signs, and he's like looking up off to the right, and he's like looking into the hills, and he stops, and like really sniffing the air, and there's a canal there, and he's like, you can tell that he wants to go over there. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over there. You know, I feel like he's picking up something, so let's head over there. We go into that area. I'm searching it. I'm gridding it, going, like, finding all that stuff. And there's, you know, scrub oaks everywhere. You know, and there's just, the wind is, there's barely anything. Like, if you were to breathe out hard and it, like, you could see your breath, it just like kind of float and sit there. And we get through and we scan it and I get nothing. And then, like, coming through, I kind of check that area again, going up to this other part, and I'd already checked it like 2 times. And going back through, I'm like looking at, I'm like, okay, the dog was giving me signs here. The dog was giving me signs from like this like kind of valley or like drainage here, which the scent can kind of go down the drainage. And so like I'd covered most of the area, so I'm like, it's got to be back up into this area that I've already searched twice now. And I'm going back up, I'm kind of piecing it together, regridding it, and now I get a little bit of wind going through there, and I walk right past the person, and Indy head lifts up, looks over, and runs straight over to her. And I was just like, man, I have been through here, this is my 3rd time, and the winds were just not in the right position to catch the person, you know? And so, and that was a person that's sitting down and not moving. Add movement to that person, now it's like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, and that person's also moving, and they could be following you, behind you, or they could just be just out of sight or just downwind of you, so you're not catching the scent, and they could just, you know, so it's just saying that an area is cleared is, you know, dependable. Who knows? You know, so it's like you want to be able to check and double check and make sure that the winds are right, or, you know, have confidence in what's happening. And so there's all these aspects of the training that you're like, okay, the winds aren't doing this, so my probability of detection is going to be, you know, pretty low, or the winds are pretty high right now, my dog's going to be able to catch any scent, you know, is a lot higher. So there's that psychological difficulty of what your dog is doing. And so if you're hiking a lot of miles, you're pretty strenuous, you're moving quick.
Yeah.
So you have that physical exertion. And then you also have the mental exertion of what is my dog doing? Where is he going? Why is he doing this? What is his is he on scent? Is he off scent? So like everything's going at the same time, and you have to be watching where you're going, and you have to follow the GPS, and make sure that you're not getting lost and you're just like wandering off and just watching your dog and you don't know where you're going. So it's like the mental drain and physical drain can be exhausting.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a question about that in just a minute. But before that, another question popped up in my mind, which is, let's say you have this huge area to search. You and Indy are out there. Are there times where other teams in your group are also in the same general area? And are there any difficulties and challenges with the different dogs in the same area? Is that even something that occurs, or do you really try to keep the dogs separate?
It's like you're going to have areas that you're going to be right next to each other. You're going to be working right next to each other. And some of the dogs are like, I don't like that other dog,
Gotcha.
Or there's some cases where like my dog loves this other dog on the team, and so he'll stop working and run over to this other dog and he's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, no, we have a job to do. So it's like, you have to be able to realize like who you're working next to. And as a coordinator, if you're coordinating a group on a search, you have to be like, oh, well, these two dogs don't work together very well, so we're going to spread them apart and we're going to put this other dog in between them. And so you have to kind of take that into consideration when setting up a search. So yeah, it is a factor.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Something that people probably wouldn't even think about, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Some coordination there. Yeah, and tell me if in your experiences this is true, but I've had somebody say to me before that these dogs, when you look at a search, it's different than when a human does. You guys have this certain, your mind is in a certain place and you're thinking about things in a certain way, but a lot of times the dogs are doing what they love to do, which is chase scent. And so it's almost like a life of fun for them. They're not thinking about it quite the same way a human does. Is that your experience, and is that true? Do you think?
Indy, when I do trailing and tracking with Indy, or any of this, he like loves it. Like he goes out there and he is so excited to go work, and he's so excited to train. Other dogs, not so excited. I tried training my other golden for HR, and I kind of got her, but then I was like, I trained her at home enough that I was like, okay, I'm going to take her to training. And then she went to training and she just completely shut down. She just laid down. She's like, I'm too scared. And like, so I was just like, yeah, you're just not going to be a search and rescue dog, which, I'm okay with, because I felt bad because we got her second, and I was just like, oh, well, am I going to have time to train two dogs? And I'm like, I don't think I have enough time to train two dogs, but I feel bad leaving her at home. But then, I took her, I tried it, and I was like, no, she's happy at home, and she's happy not doing search and rescue. So, it is dog dependent. And I told you about the Aussie that, didn't like trailing, but then she really liked area problems. She liked that freedom of just being unleashed and running off. So.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like people, right?
Exactly.
We have things we like and things we don't like. That's kind of cool. Yeah, lots of personality there. Yeah, thank you for sharing and kind of bringing some clarity to that. So, you had mentioned a minute ago, and I said I wanted to get back to it, just the difficulty, right, of the physical toll of some of these searches. So my question is, for your team, you, your dog, others on the team, to handle emotional and physical toll from difficult searches and rescue operations, how do you guys handle that? Like, what do you do on site to handle that?
I mean, for physical stuff, it's, we have water, we have, we try to be as prepared as possible, bring snacks, all that stuff to help us get through that. Take rests when we need it, stay out of the sun. Maybe we're not searching at noon. Maybe we're searching early in the morning at 4 a.m. when, it's cooler and there's a little more moisture in the ground because, the scent gets revitalized with moisture versus when it's like high noon or in the afternoon when it's completely dry, it's super hot. So when we search is one thing. It's how we aspect that. But the emotional toll of the drain of like when like you've been searching for hours and you're like, oh man, is this futile? Like I'm searching in an area that's like, this guy's never going to be over here, but it's like you have to have that positive attitude. And so, taking breaks, talking about it with other people, being hyped. I was talking with one of the searches with my friend who is out there with us, and he was, the guy in the group, and I was just like, you searched this whole area, and this area needed to be searched. It could have been that he was out there, and any other chance than if he was where he was found where it was, So it's like the probability that he's in any of those locations is just as high, and so you have to, rule those locations out, or you have, it has to be searched, and so you just have to stay positive and be like, okay,
yes.
I may not have found the person, but this area is cleared out as far as I know, so it's like the little victories that you have to look at, or at least that's what I focus on, is like, okay, we've cleared this area, we've done this, and
yes.
At the end of the day, it was a great hike with a dog.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's encouraging to hear that, really, to me, because what that means is nobody's looking to make a shortcut here, right? We're saying this area needs to be searched. It will be searched, right? That's important for people who experience a lost person, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's pretty interesting. So looking through some of my notes here, and one of the things I'm curious about is if somebody's interested in becoming a SAR dog handler, or saying, is my dog a good candidate for this? What advice and suggestion would you give to them?
Look into a group. Find a group near you that trains. Maybe kind of know what you're wanting out of it. Like, why do you want to do it? Are you wanting to do it for the dog, or are you wanting to do it for yourself? Because there's other things that you can do with a dog, like that. There's like different scent competitions, and you can do like scent work, and you can do tracking or training. There's competitions for that stuff. So if you're wanting to do that, that's maybe not so, outdoorsy, or not outdoorsy, but like exposed to the elements, because we may be searching in like in a blizzard, or like snowy, cold, sleeting weather, rainy, we're still going to be out there searching. We're still going to be training in that weather, because like we train in the weather that we could search in. So maybe if you're like, nah, that doesn't sound right for me, then, find a group that matches your style. If it's search and rescue, you're like, oh yeah, I love a Sufferfest. Let's go out there. Let's do this. Like, find a group that trains and, get evaluated by them. They can usually, like the senior handlers can usually tell pretty quick whether a dog wants to work or not, and training yourself is difficult too. Like there's hours and hours of training that goes into it. So, be prepared to devote every Saturday, or a Saturday twice a month or once a month, to it. So if you have the time and be realistic about it, then go for it and save people, find people,
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. And that's helpful for people, I think, to know they've got some different options too. It's not just like this one view they may have in their mind of what this means. There's other ways to interact and participate and stuff with their dog. That's great. And get assessed. Is your dog a good candidate by having others in a team help with that assessment? That's pretty cool. Well, we're getting towards the end of the interview here. I'm going to open up with one question, but I do have one request if it's possible. If it's not, that's fine. I'd love to meet your co-hero.
Yeah,
Indy.
let me go
Is
grab
he
him.
somewhere near,
Let
or
me
we
go
can
grab
just
him.
see him real quick? And if not, that's fine. Okay. Awesome.
Come here, big boy. Yeah. This is Indy.
Awesome. Indy. Hi, Indy. Thank you for all you do, Indy. And you too, Harley. It's awesome. Thank you. I'll make sure he gets on the camera because he is a handsome dog there.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yes, he does.
He deserves some
He does most of the
camera time
work.
too, for sure. Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, Harley, is there anything else that you would like the listeners to know? I've asked my questions, and thank you so much for sharing such good information with us about this whole process, your team, and how to think about this. Is there anything you think is important that you'd like to share about you or the Utah Search Dogs organization or anything like that?
I'd say if you find, hopefully you don't have to find yourself in need, but if you find yourself in need of a missing person or anything like that, or, we're a free resource out there, so if, you're in that situation and the sheriff's department's looking or this or that, you can ask like, hey, are there search dogs available? Can we use search dogs? It's very dependent upon the organizations that's managing the search, but you can ask them and be like, hey, there's this resource, Utah Search Dogs, if you're in Utah or Idaho, Nevada area, in this area, that like we'll drive out there and we'll assist you, and we're a free resource that doesn't cost the sheriff's department or anything like that money. So we're here and we're ready to be utilized, and so people knowing about us and knowing the capabilities, because not all sheriff's departments have dogs, not all search and rescue organizations have dogs either. It's a time commitment, it's the cost of having a dog, the training of the dog and training for normal search and rescue, like you have to have your high angle, your all that other training. So it's not something that a lot of people want, or maybe they've been burned in the past where, yeah, we've had a search dog come out, but they searched they were only trained once a month or a couple times a year, and so they weren't sharp on their skills, and so people are hesitant to use dogs because they've been burned in the past, or that it just didn't work out. And so being open to using us is the big one. So
Yeah.
we're here.
That's great. I appreciate it, man. Well, thank you, Harley, for you, Indy, and your team, all you guys, for what you do, and for being here with us today to share all about this. You are, thank you guys for this really wonderful mission that you guys carry out to help the public and people that are missing, because I'm sure somebody who's out there who can't find their way or is hurt, you are like the savior to them when you find them, which is an amazing thing, because sometimes Finding these people is the hardest thing to do, and the tool of your team is what makes it happen. So, everybody out there, search dogs, and specifically Utah search dogs. So now you know a little more about how all of that works. So I want to say, if you enjoy this variety of strange and unexpected information that we bring to you in this show, please subscribe. Tell others about High Strangeness, and leave a comment. What are your thoughts? Have you ever had somebody use this? Do you know somebody who's ever gone missing? What were your thoughts on how this process works? Share that. The community will like to share their thoughts and bounce some ideas back and forth. So, with all that, once again, I'm thankful for Utah search dogs. I'm thankful to Harley and Indy for being with us today. And remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality, so always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.